This scary story is brought to you by Lipstick Alley. Do not pick up stray animals, they will cuss you. Yes, you heard that bullshit right. Let me start this off by saying, while I believed in the supernatural, this is on a whole nother level. I was walking home at night from work and saw this dog looking lost in the streets. It looked like those little shit zoo, so I assumed someone in the neighborhood lost their dog. I picked up the dog and took it home with me, gave it food and water, and went about my business. I said hopefully in the morning whoever lost their dog will probably start asking the neighbors and put up posters. So I freshened up and went to bed. Tell me, why the fuck did I hear someone cursing in my house? Y'all, I woke up sweating and grabbed my blade and went peeking through my door's crevice. Blade in hand, my heart is racing as I try to get my shit together to go outside and see what the fuck is going on. All I'm hearing is, "Put me back where you found me. I'll kill you. Put me back right now, bitch." Chow. After I went looking around my house, I checked the veranda where I had the dog. Y'all, when I tell you, this dog was standing on his hind legs and looking at me and talking. Bitch, I almost fainted. This dog was telling me put him back and if not, he'll kill me. I just grabbed him and went running down the street in my nightie at fucking 2 a.m. All while this fucking dog is talking mad shit to me about how lucky I am, else he would have murdered me. Bruh. I dropped his ass and ran the fuck back home. I called my mom and she yelled at me. She said, "I told you about picking up those fucking dogs." She started going on and on about Obeah and having to do a cleanse. I haven't slept since. Please, this ain't a joke, and I'm so serious. It was clearly a man's voice in it, and it was clear as day. No muffled noise or nothing. Let me tell you what it was mainly saying. I honestly blacked the minutes I was running in the streets with my nightgown on. "Don't you ever pick me up again, you dumb bitch. You have no idea what I'm capable of. If you ever see a motherfucking dog, leave it alone. It could be me, bitch, and I won't spare you the second time." I looked back while running to make sure it wasn't following me, and I just saw it sitting there staring at me. Whoa, spooky. Now let's read the comments. Hi, twin. Yes, I agree. My mom shared a similar story of her grandma picking up a stray cat from a cemetery. Said when she took back the cat after it cussed her ass up, it transformed into this huge thing and ran stomping through the cemetery. OP knows damn well this was just a Tinder date gone wrong. Shaking my head. Jokes aside, this is not my first time hearing about shapeshifters from the islands. We have some from Barbados as well. Wanted to add a story my grandmother told me. Her brother drove past a graveyard years ago and heard a baby crying, so he picked up the baby and took it home. Later that night, the baby was a full grown man and told him to take him back where he found him. She says her brother was never the same after that, like he just mentally wasn't right after that experience. If I wasn't Haitian, I'd probably doubt this story, but I have heard similar stories from my own parents and relatives. When my father was a little boy, around 4 or 5, my grandpa hired a maid to look after him. The maid took my dad to the bathroom to bathe him, but after a few minutes, my grandpa heard blood curdling screaming from my dad. He ran to the bathroom and opened the door to find a snake slithering around while my dad had climbed atop the sink to escape it. The maid's clothes were on the floor, covered in blood, but the maid was nowhere to be found. My grandpa killed the snake. Months later, he came across the maid's sister and she said they, the maid's family, hadn't seen her in years since she had joined a cult. Nobody ever saw the maid again. My grandpa said nothing about the snake. To this day, my grandpa is certain he killed a voodoo witch, and my dad has an intense fear and hatred of snakes with no memory of why he has it. He only knows what my grandparents told him, and cannot remember the maid or the incident. When I first adopted my cat, I was doing laundry, and when she walked past me, I heard a female voice say, "Bitch," in a real nasty tone. I burned some sage right after and ended up having a dream about who the former owner was. This reminds me of a tale my mom always told me of being back home in Haiti. She said once when she was a little girl, a woman lured her to her home, offered her drinks, and disappeared into the back room. After noticing that the lady was gone for quite some time, my mom became curious and decided to check the back room while calling out for the lady. She opened the bedroom door and saw a big cat laying on the bed. She thinks voodoo was at play. According to my mom, the lady had shape shifted to an evil cat. Ever since then, she's been terrified of them. Interesting thread. I believed all of this. Southern African hair. My grandma has told me of women morphing into hyenas and bears and walking around in broad daylight. One story was on the news about a family of four caught naked in a cemetery in Africa. When asked, they said the mother in law had left them. They traveled in a basket during the night and now they have no way to get home. There are certain roads I have always been told to avoid. I have also been advised not to pick money off the ground. Some people dispose of their evil spirits via money, and whoever takes it, the evil entity attaches to them. Also, if you see a strange animal or object in the middle of nowhere, drive through it. Accelerate. Do not brake. Just drive through. Some areas are accident prone because drivers saw an object, tried to avoid it, and ended up dying. There is a lot that goes on in the spiritual world. When I was 14, this dog would only bark at me and no one else in my family. We lived in apartments at the time. So I agitated it for a while because I knew it couldn't get to me. Did this for about a month straight. One evening, I was taking out the trash and the dog came to the patio door. It was going berserk, and so I decided to keep it going. Bad move. The tenant in that unit, I had only seen him that one time. He had on glasses and was bald. He glanced at me and I went on back in the house. I didn't wake up in the middle of the night for shit. Well, this one time I was up. I remember sitting up in the bed and I could see every room as if no walls were there. Next thing I know, this damn dog was standing in the living room and that motherfucker turned into a werewolf. I seen it walk down the hall and it was like it knew exactly where to go. It took a few steps and I pulled the covers over my head and I said, "I'll stop, I'll stop." And it stopped and backed off. I seen it go back down the hall and it stood at the door and it vanished. Next day I went out to take out the trash. The dog runs up to the patio door and it sits and didn't bark one time at all. And I swear it said to me telepathically, "You know what I can do. Leave me alone." After standing there for a few seconds, I went back inside. Shortly after that, the man moved. Never knew how to classify it properly because I didn't want to call him a shapeshifter because he didn't look like a Native American at all. I've only told a few people because it's still hard to say exactly what it was, but I know what the fuck I was looking at. Then I then I read that shapeshifters can enter through the fireplace and we had one, but it stood by the door and vanished and not the fireplace. I still don't know how to properly label it to this day. Dog was small, black with a mix of white hairs. It's some kind of cattle dog. So I can't laugh at the original poster. I can't even look at black dogs and especially black wolves. They freak me out. But I don't agitate dogs at all. Fuck that. Okay, I have a similar story. My dad is from Arkansas. He and my aunts and uncles would tell us the story about some woman that lived in town doing voodoo. Her name was Matlock or something. And every day after school, they'd have to haul ass through muscadine vines to escape her, because she grabbed kids and they'd end up being found in the Mississippi River. She'd never come out her house, but the lights and stuff were always on, but never see her leave. But you can see her chasing you through the vines. At first, I thought my dad was lying, 'cause he's a Libra, but even my great aunts, his classmates, and neighbors confirmed this story. And yes, the voodoo lady was black. I saw the spirit of my dead puppy, Kobe. He was Bichon Frise and was bad as hell. It was like he was obsessed with escaping and being free. He would run out in the middle of the street and chance any chance he could get. He would constantly dig holes under the fence and escape, mostly just to run or get pet by strangers. Very strange behavior for a Bichon. Anyway, he got hit by a car one day and died. He had escaped and was running in the street. He had dodged death a lot prior to this incident. Kobe didn't even make it to 1 year old. A couple of years later, I was up late at night and I couldn't sleep. I was looking out my window and saw him run across an area lit up by the streetlight. I thought I was seeing things until I saw him again, running in the same happy, carefree way he used to, and in the exact same spot he got hit. Family thought I was crazy, but I know what I saw. It was him. I actually believe I read a similar story on here years ago. The dog wasn't a stray, but a sitter was watching a kid overnight and had to sleep there, and she said the dog was walking back and forth on two legs, and when she saw him, he started talking to her. But she pretended to be asleep, and the dog was like, I know you aren't sleeping. That story had me creeped out and dying at the same time. I heard a story like this once. A woman from St. Lucia said this happened to her back home. She picked up a cat, and it called her bitch and told her to carry it back to where she found him. My cousins and I were talking on FaceTime. She saw my cat in the background and said hello. You know that cat said hello back? We screamed and freaked out. My cat walked away minding her business. I'm not making this up either. My friend said she saw a baby turn into a cat. The shape-shifting stories are very common in African slash Caribbean nations slash African diasporic. I know in my own state of Florida, Uncle Monday, a slave who fought alongside the Seminoles, shape-shifted into an alligator. In 1961, there was a case of a dog with a woman's face in Watts, California. It was seen around a neighborhood for several hours before it disappeared. It apparently spoke to a pimp, and that pimp was found dead later on. There were theories about the creature being some type of spirit slash entity from a curse from Palo, Brujeria, or voodoo. A few years ago, I had an early AM flight, like 5:30 a.m., and it takes about an hour to get to the airport, and had and I had to be there a couple of hours beforehand for the check-in, etc. I live in the US suburbs. Pavement pretty much rolls up at 9 p.m., etc. So here I am in the middle of the night, trying to load up my car with my luggage. All of a sudden, I hear this dog growling and barking viciously right behind me. I roll around to see where it is because I ain't no dog fan to begin with. As I turn around, I see this paler than pale white man with huge ears, arms raised up like he was going to pounce on me. I couldn't move, couldn't scream. It was like it had some ability to freeze me on the spot. I could smell stank breath just as he was about to grab me. Just then, a car came driving down the road, and the thing that was before me morphed back into a four-legged dog creature and took off running into the woods that backed onto the road. The car turned out to be a lost driver. I flagged him down. He saw the thing too. So yes, skinwalkers, shapeshifters, etc. do exist. This one involved me, but it's my mom's story. But I was there for the reunion. So my mom and I were on this bus in New York 2 years ago. She wanted to go to Bobby's or whatever to get some bathroom mats. My boyfriend's two aunts who live in New York were the ones taking us. So while sitting there, there was a lady holding a laminated newspaper clipping explaining something to the lady next to her. My mom overheard pieces of it and was like, "Wait, Miss Louise, is that you?" She answered yes and looked a bit worried. My mom said, "It's me, Tofi. That's my mom's nickname. Miss Molly's daughter. She hasn't seen this woman in like 49 years, y'all." So they started talking about Miss Louise's daughter. My mom chimed in because she lived in the neighborhood and was present for the entire thing. The story went like this. Miss Louise's daughter said she was going to the lake. My grandma lived on top of the hill and could see the lake from where she was at. She said she saw the girl pacing alongside the lake for an hour. She kept an eye on her because she looked a bit disoriented. My mom said she heard her mom screaming and went running down the hill. The girl jumped in the water and disappeared. My grandma got to the lake to see if she drowned, and they could not find her at all. The entire community came out in news crew and nothing turned up. After 7 days, the little girl turned up and she was missing all her organs and her face was removed. Till this day, she has no clue what happened. Now, the newspaper clippings that she had laminated was of her son. My mom told this story to us when we got off the bus. She said Miss Louise's son had something done to him. He used to vomit screws. He used to shit stones, I think, and his eyes were screws and nails. People from all over Trinidad used to come by to see him, and it was even in the newspaper. He eventually died from all that torture he was going through. My mom said it was Miss Louise doing all that wickedness to her children. She was an evil, evil woman and practiced obeah, and when her husband left her, she took it out on the children. She still has 3 other kids, but she met some other guy and had them for him. I wish the newspaper had an archive we could go through because I'm positive it'll be there. Last story that I'm going to read from this thread. Let's keep this thread moving. Very interesting stories. Thanks, OP and Lipstick Alley. I remember a font in another thread stating her aunt saw children mistreating a stray cat. The aunt shooed the children away, and the next day a woman approached the aunt, thanking her for not letting the children hurt her. I'm still freaked out about that story. Another story from a supervisor regarding an employer. A former supervisor told me a story about a young lady that used to work for her. Her employee ended up getting sick and died. Her death was a mystery because doctors ran tests on her and she was healthy. A couple of weeks after her death, a lady walks in the department and asks for the former employee. She started laughing, asking if she's dead yet. Time for me to go to bed now.